I was never like this, craving for warmth from another man, wanting another man so badly I can barely think straight. Well, what do you expect from one that has been dead inside for so long? It was bound to happen at some point, but not with him, not with Jarvis. First day was an accident, a very pleasant accident. Although Jarvis had been giving me those red eyes, flaunting his muscles around the house and trying to help me when my husband's not home, I never read any meaning to it. He is a very desirable man, I must say, but he was my husband's brother, almost like my own brother, so nothing could happen. But Jarvis wanted to be more. I have caught him staring at me before, staring at me like a child staring at their favorite toy at a toy store. He wanted me to be his toy and did not mind that I was his brother's toy. The first accident happened on a cold Friday morning. My husband had gone to work, as always, leaving me alone in the house with Jarvis. Previous night was intense and sad at the same time. My husband came home tired from the day's work and wanted only to sleep. Not me. I wanted him. I wanted to become his dolly, to be fondled and rough-handled. I wanted him to stroke my hair passionately, call me sweet names while he does the nasty with me in different styles and different languages. I was dressed in the black nightgown that always gets him growing, with my lips red like rose petals, and my siren eyes waiting to immerse him into a pool of pleasure. He saw this. He knew what I wanted, but shrugged it off, begging me to let him be. Jared, my husband, turned me down again. The sixth time. And before I could make a fuss about it, he had begun to snore. The weather was not helping at all. I was alone now with the muscular Jarvis, and my hormones were all over the place. I would not do this to my husband. But chances are that he is already doing this to me. After much thought, I left the bed and decided to go about my chores. I was still on the black nightie from the previous night, and because of the cold, I adjusted the thermostat and told Siri to play me Do It To Me One More Time by Lionel Richie. First thing on my to-do list was laundry. I took the dirty clothes to the garage where we kept the washing machine, bent over to sort the clothes out before putting them in the machine. I was bent over for what seemed like 15 minutes, removing white clothes and separating cotton from satin. Lionel Richie's voice filled the house so much that I did not hear Jarvis come in. He stood still, watching me swing my waist while sorting the clothes. When I asked him after the act was done what thought was going through his mind while he watched me dance, he said, "Oh, I wanted you, and I knew I would go crazy if I did not have you." After 10 minutes of watching me with those bulgy eyes, Jarvis came closer and grabbed me from behind. I was startled. He immediately covered my mouth to keep me from shouting and whispered softly, "No need to shout, silly. It's just me." And that was it. I was undone. I had never heard a more soothing voice like that in my life. Maybe I have, but at that moment, Jarvis's voice was like Marvin Gaye's. I calmed down, feeling his growth touching my back. It was a huge growth. I could feel it. "Jarvis, what do you think you're doing? Do you want your brother to catch us?" I said these words, hoping it would only gear him on. And as expected, it did. He's probably in a meeting somewhere, trying to convince some investor to buy shares in his dumb company. I smiled, knowing that he had succumbed to my trap. "So what do you want? Why are you holding me like this? I can feel your hardness behind me. Please let me go." I said all this while placing my behind softly on his hardness. His toy was getting super turgid. I wanted so much to hold it, to make it mine, to seize this moment. "I want you just as much as you want me. I want you even more." I turned to catch his eyes. It was filled with so much desire. A pleasure before the real pleasure began. He drew me close to him roughly, just as I like it, and planted the most beautiful kiss on my lips. I resisted. Even though I wanted him badly, I would not do this to my husband. Jarvis smiled. He had envisioned this challenge and was very much prepared for it. He pulled me close again. "Stop." I said this like a little girl hoping he would go on. Jarvis read the cadence of my stop and persisted. I was close to him now. Eyes locked in a stare, waiting for a movement, waiting for either of us to loosen the lock. But none of us did. He reached out again, this time unsure of himself, and kissed me. I did not move, did not bulge, although Jarvis has the softest lips. I closed my eyes to take in the moment and allowed myself go. Not too far, though. A lot of what-ifs clouded my mind. What if Jared comes home? What if he doesn't? What if I enjoy Jarvis? Worst, what if I come alive? The garage was darker than usual on that day. It was cloudy and soon the rains came. Jarvis was still taking my lips in, taking the whole of me in, when suddenly I pushed him away. We can't do this. Jared is your brother, your twin brother at that. Let's stop now and pretend like this never happened. Jarvis did not get angry. He knew what he wanted. He knew he had to get me and was patient enough to get it. We sat down on the garage floor. I could see his hardness in the shorts wore. The silence of longing enveloped us, making the atmosphere a little tense. Jarvis stood up and went to the bar in the living room to get us something to drink. I wanted to follow him, but I was too glued to the floor to move. He brought 2 glass cups and a bottle of whiskey, filled the cups, and gave me mine. I downed it in one gulp while he stayed sipping his. "So, what we gonna do now?" He said this while looking at me with those eyes. I shrugged my shoulders, filled my glass with whiskey, and downed it again. Jarvis knew what I was trying to do. He did not want me to be drunk. He took the bottle away from me, wanting me to be aware, to be innocent enough to give in to him. I wanted that too. The silence returned again, this time with a flush of intense longing. Jarvis moved closer to me again. It was getting really cold in the garage, and for some weird reasons we did not want to leave. We held each other for warmth, and no cure the tension in the air, Jarvis moved in again for a kiss. This time I was a little loose from the alcohol. The foretaste of whiskey on our tongue missed, and that was what made the magic. Jarvis and I made out hard like teenagers who just discovered they could. And before I knew it, his hands were in other places. The black nightie I wore allowed him access to my inner goodies, and he explored them quite masterfully. First he touched my nipples, fondled them, and took the left one in his mouth. I let out a soft moan, an approval marker. Jarvis became an infant sucking hard from his mother's breast, but this time he knew how to elicit pleasure from it. He held the right nipple and twisted it softly. I had never felt so much pleasure in my entire life, not even with Jared. Jared is a regular man, comes in, does the regular back and forth till the stars align for him and he moves out. But Jarvis, he understands the anatomy of a woman's body, and he took his time to take the whole of me in. I thought the nipples were the height of it, until he went down and I saw firecrackers like the 4th of July. I was ready to feel bask in the euphoria of this new sensation when I heard Jared's car pull up on the driveway. It was the most confusing 2 minutes of my life. Jarvis had to calm me down. I was calm enough to go to the door. Jared had forgotten an important file for his meeting in his study and headed straight to get it. I don't think he even noticed me when he came in. I worked to the study with him and watched him rummage through files looking for whatever he was looking for. Jared was a perfect man, working hard to make life better for us. He was so immersed in his want for a better life that he forgot to enjoy the one he had built already. But Jarvis? Jarvis was the stack opposite. He had been dishonorably discharged from the army and was squatting with us till Jared found some work for him. Jared finally found the file, gave me a kiss, and I walked him to the car. He drove off. I thought, I can't do this. Not to a man as perfect as Jared. I went to the garage where Jarvis waited patiently and was about to tell him off when he dragged me by the neck and shut me up with a full kiss. Lips and tongue. That was it. That was actually it. He went down again and came undone. Jarvis parted my rose petals expertly with his index and middle finger. He paused to take in the bald neatness of my earth and heaved. It was a sigh that read, "Finally, this rose is mine." He went in like a butterfly, feeding on the nectar from this rose petal with his soft proboscis. Jarvis. That was all I could say. The name of the man ushering me into the hallowed walls of nirvana. I hold his head to keep him from coming up for breath. I was at the door of nirvana, at the door of this utopia. I had heard my friends talk about this feeling, but never have I felt it. Not until Jarvis. My legs begin to shake. It is a tremor like I had never felt before. Jarvis. I call out again this time. I'm gasping, trying to catch my breath, trying to hold myself from shouting, trying to save this fish from drowning. It is too late now. Ever so late. The shaking is accompanied with a shout of extreme pleasure. I reach out for Jarvis. I hold him close. We were on the garage floor. My arms and legs wrapped around him as I quake. That moment, I was at his mercy, and he was going to make his mark on the navel of my soul. With my legs still quaking and my hands wrapped around him, Jarvis reaches for his toy and sets to work. With the first stroke, there was the gate of the celestial city. I could see the Milky Way. I could touch meteors, galaxies, stars, comets. That moment, I was one with the elements. With each stroke, I knew I wanted more. With every thrust, I knew this would be a lifelong affair. Our eyes were locked. He wanted me to see as he takes me in, as he makes me his. I looked down to see the remaking of my soul, to see his rhythmic movement, and it was like the rainbow after weeks of rain. Beautiful. Eternally beautiful. But the timing changed. Jarvis was done remaking me. Now it was time to make me his. He turned me over and set to work. Hard strokes. Train thrusts. Jarvis took me with so much hate and love at the same time. And all the while it was his name I called. In different shades, different cadences. Jarvis. Then came the legs shaking again. I could not help it. My legs became wobbly like overcooked noodles and the shouting followed. He allowed me to express myself, and when I ebbed, the pleasure continued. The pleasure became more intense with each thrust, more visible with each movement of his tool. And after what seemed like eternity, Jarvis let out a scream. I did too. It was a timed climax. He lets his tool spill inside me. I did not mind. I would not mind. He falls on me and I hold him. We hold each other with no guilt in sight. He steals breaths from me and I do the same from him. We merged that day on the garage floor and I was still on my black nightie, at least what was left on it that hung to my skin. He stood up and laid beside me with a conquering smile on his face. I knew what the smile meant. Victory at last. We did not say anything for the next 20 minutes. We just soaked in the moment, gave our bodies a little rest, and I stood up. He stood up too. And as I was about to leave, Jarvis held me, dragged me close to him, and planted another kiss on my lips. I needed it. We stayed that way for another 10 minutes before he let me go. I went to the bathroom to wash up, allowing the water to flow down my body as I smiled from ear to ear. I bit my lower lip, remembering where I was some minutes ago, remembering who I was under and how he taught me the way of the world. I stayed in the bathroom longer than usual, reliving the moment I seized with my full being. I came out of the bathroom and wore a flimsy gown, one of my stay-at-home gowns. It was already afternoon, and I had not done the laundry or any other thing on my to-do list. Who cares? Not me. I went to the kitchen and made something for Jarvis to eat. He deserved it. After cooking, I went down to the garage, stacked the unwashed clothes, and threw them in the laundry basket. Today is my Independence Day, and I would enjoy it to the fullest. I poured myself a bottle of whiskey with the same smile I had in the bathroom still planted on my face. Lionel Richie's "Do It To Me One More Time" still blared in the house. I danced slowly, holding the glass of whiskey and smiling. Jarvis stares at me with so much satisfaction. After he finished eating, he came to join me in the living room. We danced together. This time his hands were on my behind, and I loved it. I loved every bit of that afternoon, of that day in its entirety. Time waltzed by. Before we knew it, Jared's car pulled up again. It was time to come back to my reality. But this reality had been made magical, and I was determined to hold that magic for as long as I could. Jared noticed my smile. I could not hide it from him. I guess he thought I had forgiven him for leaving me high and dry the previous night. I have. I have forgiven him all his transgressions. I had washed his sins with Jarvis's tool, washed it white as snow. Jared gave me a weak hug and a slight brush of the lips on my very flushed cheeks and went to the bedroom. I followed him, as I normally do. He takes a bath, all the while going on about the contract he just won and what it meant for us. I was sad for a while because the contract meant nothing to me. Not at that moment. But I could not say it. I was too alive to say anything. I even zoned out at some point. My mind traveled to the garage floor and the destination called Nirvana, where Jarvis brought me to and left me. I was there a little too long because I did not hear Jared come out of the bathroom. "Honey, are you fine?" I was startled out of my trance. "Yes, dear, I'm just super excited for you." I could not fake the excitement. I was actually super excited. And what's more, I was super excited for tomorrow when I would be left alone with Jarvis again. I could barely sleep. That night Jared came on top of me, and all the while I pictured Jarvis. It was a long wait for morning, but I waited patiently. And when the sun rose, it was the happiest sunrise I had ever seen.